Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. We're looking at a picture that I believe is a picture of the last straw, which led to the war that broke out on October 7th of 2023. The last straw, not the only straw, the last one. This is a picture of a Texas rancher along with a Christian organization called B'nai Israel and the Temple Institute, which is based out of Jerusalem. And they're the ones that have created all the vessels for the temple. And they're involved in getting the priests trained and ready for temple service. And, I'm sure little did they know that this, in all likelihood, would lead to this war that we see right now, which is at the moment not limited just to Israel and not just to the Gaza Strip, but the West Bank, the northern part of Israel, as well as the entire region. Because just yesterday, I don't know if you saw the news, but the United States has retaliated to the drone strike that killed 3 American soldiers in Jordan. And in this attack, the last that I checked, the United States has hit 85 targets, and some of them have included Iranian targets, not just the militias that Iran, sponsors, but Iranian targets themselves. So, and we don't know where this is going to go. What we can say is that in Israel's history, it's been one of the bloodiest wars with one of the highest death tolls when you take both sides together. And it's not a typical conflict or campaign or operation. And I personally think that this very well could be the beginning of the final war, and things can escalate really quickly. But anyway, why are we talking about this? Because we're going to be talking about the idea that the Red Heifers may have initiated this war. And the reason why I believe that is because just yesterday I came across this video. I did not know about this video. This is a video of a speech to commemorate the 100th day of the war. All right, the 100th day. It actually came out on that day, January 14th, 2024. And it's very interesting because you know what else is important about that day, January 14th? 6 years earlier, President Nelson became president of the church on that day, January 14th, 2018. 6 years later, it's the 100th day of this war that could prove to be the final war. It's very strange. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the Red Heifers. We're going to talk about this news. And we're going to look at all the preparations that have been made to re-implement the services of the Third Temple that the Jews have done. And there's a lot. So much that I decided to go ahead and put together a new spreadsheet, a new timeline, that goes over the many, many, many things that they've done to prepare for the temple. Everything from constructing the altar for the temple, recreating the temple instruments, as well as doing reenactments and training the priests and everything, selecting a high priest. So we're going to do a review of that. But first, let's go ahead and let's read from this article. This was from January 17th, and it's too bad that I missed this. I feel like I catch all the good articles whenever they come up on Israel 365, but I missed this one. Hamas spokesman, October 7th attack launched to stop the Red Heifers. And I may have to depart from that specific opinion. I don't know. Like I said, I don't think that was the sole purpose, but I do think it was the last straw. Obviously, there's the wider conflict, just them just wanting Israel gone in the first place. And there's other things to consider, but I do think that this played a part and that it was the last straw. That's just my opinion. Abu Obaida, the military spokesman for the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam brigades, the military wing of the Palestinian Hamas terrorist organization, made a televised appearance on the 100th day of the Israeli war on Gaza. The televised speech was the first time he had appeared in 7 weeks. That's an interesting number. During that time, All of his public statements were either audio recordings or written statements. A lapse of several weeks even led to speculations that he had been killed. The Palestinian Chronicle translated his speech. In the third paragraph, Abu Obaida listed the motives for the Hamas attack on Israel. Quote, "We look back 100 days to remember the educated, the complicit, and the incapacitated among the world powers governed by the law of the jungle, reminding them of an aggression that reached its peak against our path, Al-Quds, which is Arabic name for Jerusalem, and Al-Aqsa. That's the mosque that's on top of the Temple Mount. There's the Al-Aqsa Mosque and then the Dome of the Rock, and the entire thing is the Al-Aqsa compound, with the start of its actual temporal and spatial division. The bringing of red cows as an application of a detestable religious myth designed for aggression against the feelings of an entire nation in the heart of its Arab identity and the path of its prophet, the night journey and ascension to heaven." That's making reference to the rock that's housed by the Dome of the Rock, and how Muhammad, according to Islam, made an ascension into heaven from that point, called the night journey. Okay, so later on, he says, "We will not tire or falter in calling all the free people of the nation to rise to support their Aqsa and the path of their prophet, which the criminal Zionists are practically advancing towards destroying and establishing their temple." Now, this isn't necessarily a baseless claim. As to whether anyone would actually try and destroy the Dome of the Rock or anything else up there, I don't know about that. But they are, in fact, practically advancing toward reinstating the services of the Third Temple, right? I think that the Muslims are nervous about the current government because, according to many different articles and news stories that I've seen, it's the most religious and to the right government that Israel's had in its history. There's some controversial figures within the government. And so I think that they do have a real concern that the Israelis are planning something. I don't think that's without warrant, but does it justify what they did on October 7th? I don't think so. No. What they did was very brutal and horrific. And anyway, but you can see the other side's point of view. They can read the news too. They have access to the same things that we do. And we do see the advancing towards the reestablishment of the Third Temple. We're going to go over that in the last part of this video. Continuing. "This is what we have chosen with our blood in Gaza for 100 days, and for which the epic of October 7th was about." Yeah, remember, they called the name of this operation Al-Aqsa Storm and also Al-Aqsa Flood, trying to rally all other Muslims to protect the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Temple Mount. That's like what they made the focus of their campaign, or at least they named it that way. In his speech, he frequently describes Israelis as Nazis and called on every Muslim, or quote, "every Muslim on the face of the earth to join the war." He continues, "We believe that it is our jihadist and religious duty to inform the 2 billion Muslims in the world that the Zionist enemy, over the course of 100 days, destroyed most of the mosques in the Gaza Strip, desecrated, burned, and bulldozed those reached by its vehicles on the ground, and stopped the call to prayer and praying in a clear religious war." Now, I have that highlighted because, as we've read, Millennial Messiah, Bruce R. McConkie, makes it clear that the final war is a religious war. And this one certainly is. It may not be strictly religious. There's other things going on as well. And of course, it's my belief it's not that the Israelis are intentionally destroying their mosques because they don't like Islam. We know that terrorist groups before have used mosques as places to find shelter or to, conduct operations from, or use as storehouses, things like that. So I don't think that it's without reason that they're destroying mosques if they're being used for war. But anyway, continuing, he says, completing what the religious Zionist gangs started in their war on Al-Aqsa Mosque. So that's how they view it, a war on Al-Aqsa Mosque. This is an ominous sign in destruction for these Nazi killers, as they cannot wage a war against God. And this is affirmed by the text of the Torah, the Bible, and the Quran. End quote. Arab language media covered Abu Obaida's speech extensively, focusing on the red heifer, while noting that 5 red female calves were brought to Israel in September 2022. After the announcement of the arrival of the cows, Hamas reacted almost immediately, warning that the potential Jewish ritual posed a threat to Al-Aqsa. And again, it potentially does, because it would clear the way for the Jews to be able to reinstate the temple services, because right now all Jews are considered ritually unclean. This is like the one thing that's stopping them from moving forward, is they have to all be purified by the ashes of the red heifer. After that, then however they choose to do it, they can reinstate temple services. There's still the issue of the Temple Mount. The red heifers wouldn't remove that, but it would clear the way for them to be spiritually ready to reinstate temple services. So let's go back to this article, Israel 365 exclusive, red heifers arrive in Israel. Okay. Now this is September, or the date of this article is September 16th, 2022. So this was about a year before the war started. Okay. So again, the Texas rancher right here, the people from the Temple Institute, the people from B'nai Israel. Okay, the Temple Institute and B'nai Israel made a huge step towards reinstating the temple service on Thursday when 5 red heifers landed at Ben Gurion International Airport. The red heifer was the main component in the biblically mandated process of ritual purification for impurity that results from proximity or contact with a dead body. Because the elements needed for this ceremony have been lacking since the destruction of the Second Temple, all Jews today are considered ritually impure, thereby preventing the return of the temple service. The Temple Institute launched its Red Heifer program about a decade ago, led by Rabbi Azariah Ariel. But even in temple times, an animal that fulfilled the biblical requirements was exceedingly rare. Failing to produce a suitable candidate from ranchers in Israel, the Temple Institute began investigating alternative sources for a red heifer. And then again, the rancher that was able to do this was Byron Stinson, right here from Texas. A team of rabbis from the Temple Institute flew out to inspect the calves last year. The requirements are incredibly demanding, requiring that there be no more than 2 non-red hairs. Okay, so you can have 2, but no more on the entire calf. It must also never have been used for any labor or have been impregnated. The heifer must be 2 years and 1 day old to be suitable for the ceremony. Sometimes a calf that is perfectly red when it is young develops black or white hairs as it grows older, or may develop a blemish. Sometimes sometimes the colored hairs fall out or disappear. Certifying the calf requires a complete and extensive inspection in which a rabbi knowledgeable in the law goes over the entire calf with a magnifying glass. The cows, so this set of 5 here, the cows were between 5 to 8 months old. To be suitable for the red heifer ceremony, the cow must be 2 years and 1 day old. So these heifers will be raised in Israel until they reach the proper age. Now, I have put together a spreadsheet to track the red heifers because I have 3 different sources that talk about different groups or different individuals, and it's unclear how many there are. So we just talked about these 5, right, from the article that we just read. And then there's this YouTube video by the Israel guys. These red heifers may be used in the Third Temple special interview. I'll put the link for this in the description below. They were interviewing a guy that's involved with the Red Heifers, this guy right here, I can't remember his name. And he gave their ages at the time of that interview. And so I put that here in columns D and E. And then I have one other source. It's from this article here. Biblical red heifer could bring 1 million visitors to Samaria. And this one refers to one red heifer. Like it gives the age of one particular red heifer. So it's unclear to me exactly how many there are, but in this group of 5, their ages ranged from 5 to 8 months old, like we read in the article in September of 2022, which means that the oldest ones have already turned 2 years and 1 day as of January. We're now in February. So sometime in January, the oldest ones turned 2 years old. And then the youngest ones will turn 2 years old in April. Okay. And these, out of all the ones that I have here, they would be the last ones to turn 2 years old. So by April, for sure, we should have the red heifers, as long as their hairs have stayed red and no more than 2 are a color other than red. But then you have these other ones. You have this group or couple, or I don't know how many. It's at least 2 that was mentioned in the Israel guys video. And so the ages for those, they should they should have already turned 2 years old as of November and December of 2023. So they should already be ready. And then this one that's referred to in this article should also already be 2 years old as of September of last year. So we're basically at the end to where they should have a suitable red heifer that's at least 2 years and 1 day old that they can burn for its ashes. We're at that point right now. So let's go back to this article dated September 30th, 2022. So remember, that month you had that batch of 5 red heifers that were shipped to Israel, the ones that came from the Texas rancher. And there's this article. Hamas warns red heifers signal a new stage in the Judaization of the mosques on Temple Mount, calls for violence. So this is almost exactly a year before they attacked Israel on October 7th, 2023. A year before, the month that the 5 red heifers came to Israel, they said it was a new stage at this point, and there were calls for violence. Okay. Arab media are citing the arrival of the red heifers in Israel as a threat to the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. The announcement comes during the Jewish high holidays and in a period when the IDF is engaged in ongoing operations to combat terrorism in Samaria. Arab language media, including the Al-Manar channel, which is closely associated with Hezbollah, are reporting on the intention of the temple organizations to make a sacrifice on the Temple Mount. The Arab announcement comes just a few weeks after Boneh Israel, an organization that connects Christian lovers of Israel to the Holy Land, brought 5 young red cows to Israel with the intention of reinstating the Torah commandment associated with the red heifer. Palestinian leaders are warning against Jews performing religious rituals during the holidays, such as blowing the shofar or the ram's horn. The Israeli police have responded by restricting Jews from blowing the shofar in areas adjacent to the Temple Mount, despite court rulings that this activity is protected by law. And we're going to be looking at some of that because this has happened in the past, the blowing of the shofar on certain holidays. The Hamas journal Al-Risala published an article claiming that the slogan Al-Aqsa is in danger is no longer sufficient because the Israelis are already working on manifesting the temple rituals that would, quote unquote, Judaize the holy mosques. So you guys, here's evidence they were talking about this more than a year ago when the red heifers came to Israel, those 5. So I really do think that they were actually in reality concerned about this and the implications of having the ashes of the red heifer. Continuing, in a street rally held in Gaza last week, several speakers warned that Jews would hold religious ceremonies at the Temple Mount during the holidays. They especially warned against the blowing of the shofar and animal sacrifices, calling for a general uprising inside Israel. Now, this is kind of chilling based on what we saw on October 7th, because you'll remember, not only did they attack to get things started, but they called their Operation Al-Aqsa Flood and Al-Aqsa Storm, and they did do a general call for an uprising and for jihad. And again, it's unclear if this is part of a bigger plan or if they thought that they could get the ball rolling by doing what they did. But they called on everybody to join in. They were making serious calls for the destruction of Israel. But a year before they actually did it, the month that the red heifers came, they were calling for, general uprising. Anyway, continuing, and called to prepare for an action similar to the one that led to the Guardian of the Walls operation last year. Well, it turned out that they did more than just that. Rabbi Yosef Berger, the rabbi of King David's tomb on Mount Zion, noted that the Palestinian reaction is based in misrepresentations of the Bible. Quote, the ceremony of the The ceremony of the red heifer may only be performed at a specific location on the Mount of Olives, the rabbi explained to Israel 365 News. Continuing, it is not performed on the Temple Mount, as they claimed. Also, the young cows that were brought to Israel were less than 1 year old and must be at least 2 years old to be suitable for the ceremony. So, back in September of 2022, Hamas and others didn't have to be too concerned because of that. Yeah, we still have a while before they turn 2 years old. But as I just showed you, we are now at that time when they are starting to turn 2 years. And it seems like probably most of them already have turned 2 years old. Okay. The first of which would have been that single heifer in September of 2023. And then October brought in the war, the attack from Hamas. And then in the months following, that's when the rest of them would be turning 2 years old. I wouldn't be surprised if they did some, similar things, some similar calculations, and they wanted to get this war going or conduct this attack before they turned 2 years old in the coming months. You see, it's very interesting timing. They didn't do it back in 2022. They didn't do it in early 2023. They did it in a month just before well, again, there's this one right here that should have already turned 2 years old in September, but they did it a month before the next ones would turn 2 and other ones that would turn 2 in the coming months after that. It's very, very interesting. I think they really actually were concerned about this, and hence the timing. There's also the fact that the war started exactly 50 years, and I think it's like 50 years and a day from the Yom Kippur War. That may have also played into the timing. And it also happened during the Feast of Tabernacles, on the last day, Simchat Torah. And so there were probably a few things going on, but it just so happened that it fell during a time when the heifers are about to turn 2 years old. As to whether Hamas and the Palestinians and the Arabs misunderstand the red heifer and where it's supposed to be burned, I'm not so sure, because, again, they have access to the same things that you and I do. They have access to the Temple Institute website. If you go to the Temple Institute website, it has a depiction of the red heifer over here on the Mount of Olives, and it's supposed to be done in sight of the temple. And if I remember right, it's supposed to be done within sight of the Holy of Holies. Like, if you have the priest over here, they should be able to have a direct line of view of the inside of the temple, right? Not that they would be looking into the Holy of Holies, but to where they would see, I guess, the veil of the temple. So, and I don't have an article up right now that shows this, but I read somewhere, probably on Israel 365, that Bonei Israel purchased the land where this would be done. So they have that location already purchased and secured. And the question is, when would they do this? There's some people in the comments last time that we talked about this that said that it's supposed to be done near or during Passover. I haven't seen anything that has suggested that. I've asked for sources, but no one's provided it so far. So I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I would think that they would do it as soon as possible so as to not risk any of them developing, different colored hairs. You don't want to risk that happening. So you might want to do it as soon as possible. I don't know. Or maybe it does have to be done at that time, but I haven't seen anything to suggest that. But if that's the case, well, that's coming up here pretty soon within the next few months. And if that happens, and I can't imagine that it wouldn't, they've been trying so hard to produce a red heifer that I feel like it's all but inevitable that within the next couple months, we're going to be seeing this happening. And if that comes to light, it's probably going to take it to a completely new stage. If simply bringing the red heifers to Israel brought in a new stage according to Hamas, then actually burning the red heifer and getting the ashes would take it to a brand new stage, I would imagine. So we might be in for a bumpy ride in the next couple months. All right, so let's go ahead and look at my new spreadsheet that has everything that I'm tracking as far as preparations and steps that have been taken to reinstate the third temple. And the first entry that I have on here is from 1987 with the establishment of the Temple Institute. And we've covered them before. They're the ones that have recreated all these different things for use in the third temple. Everything from the showbread table to the breastplate of the high priest. They did a lot of research to figure out what gems they should use for the breastplate of the high priest. They've recreated the Ark of the Covenant. They've also done the menorah, which, as you can see, is on public display in the old city in the Jewish quarter near the Herva synagogue. It's in like a bulletproof glass case, which is really neat. They've done a lot of things. So they're very enthusiastic about the third temple. Okay, so 1987. All right, the next thing that I have on here, 2002. This is in Ramat Gan, which is near Tel Aviv, Bar Ilan University. So claimed to have verified the specific insect referred to in the Bible used for the manufacturing of unique red dye used for the temple curtain or the veil, as well as the garments of the high priest. So they're very meticulous when it comes to how things are supposed to be done, how things are supposed to be recreated. You can't just use any dye. You have to find the actual insect that was used back in the days of the first and second temples. So it's a very painstaking process that they're going through. So that was 2002. Now we're in 2009, Temple Institute. This is Mitzpeh, Jericho, east of Jerusalem, which is near Jericho. And we have the first new altar. Okay. Building sacrificial altar begins on Tisha B'Av. If you don't know what that is, it's the saddest day on the Hebrew calendar. Tradition holds that was the day that the first and the second temples were destroyed. And so it's a day set aside to commemorate that, to do a fast, and there's other obligations associated with that day. So it's fitting that they would, build this altar for the third temple on that day, looking forward to the day of the third temple. And I don't have a picture of this, unfortunately, but again, the reference for it is in column I, so you can go check that out. All right, let's move on. I'm not going to cover this. This has to do with the reinstatement of Jubilee years. I'm actually probably going to do a separate video about this and put it on a different spreadsheet. I just put it here for now. All right, the next thing is in 2015, December 22nd, the Temple Institute and a second new altar. A temple altar, which was completed in late 2014, officially inaugurated during the Institute's public kindling ceremony for the Golden Menorah on the 7th night of the Hanukkah holiday. So, unfortunately, I don't have the exact date when it was completed, but it was sometime in late 2014. So this is, well, it would seem this is a separate altar from the one that we just talked about in 2009. So this appears to be the second altar. And I do have a picture of that. It's right here, Israel 365. New details emerge on rebuilt altar of Jewish Holy Temple. And there you go. It looks pretty simple. It looks like it's just basically bricks. They're doing some kind of reenactment here or demonstration, but that's really neat. So this is, as far as I can tell, the second altar that they've built. Okay, the next thing, now we're in 2016, the 28th of March, Jerusalem, the Temple Institute. Announcement of compiling a list of Jewish priests who will be eligible to prepare the red heifer and serve in the temple. The announcement coincides with the weekly Torah reading that describes the preparation of the red heifer. So this is interesting, especially after what we were talking about earlier in the video. So, but this is back in 2016. So let's go to that article. Third temple closer than ever as search begins for eligible Jewish priests. I want to read a little bit from here. The registry will include men who have a clear patriarchal heritage from the priestly class, descendants of Aaron, were born and raised in Israel and have observed the laws of purity incumbent upon priests. This includes not coming in proximity with the dead, so priest or kohanim, that's the Hebrew word for priests, who were born in hospitals, have visited hospitals, or have entered cemeteries are not eligible, because that would be like contact with the dead body, and thereby you'd become ritually impure because of that. Once the Temple Institute has compiled a list of candidates with verified eligibility, it will begin to train them in the complex preparation of the ashes of the red heifer. The training will take place at the Nezer HaKodesh, an institute established 3 years ago to educate priests in the details of the temple service. So if I'm understanding this correctly, it's not that other priests are just automatically impure. They are, but okay, what I mean is they're to get things going, to get the ashes for the red heifer, you have to start with priests who are already clean, right? And then after that, after you produce the ashes of the red heifer, then you can purify other priests and the entire Jewish people. Does that make sense? And so essentially, they're looking for descendants of Aaron, and I don't know how else they keep track of this other than just their surname, because their last name will be something that sounds like Cohen. Sometimes it'll be Cohen or Kohen or Cowan or stuff like that. I know that's one way that they keep track of the Kohanim. Remember that the one tribe that received the priesthood under the law of Moses was the tribe of Levi. And the way that it worked was the sons of Aaron were the priests and also the high priests. They had to be descended from Aaron, Moses' brother. And then the rest of the tribe of Levi were just the Levites, and they would also assist in the temple, but they were not priests. It was the sons of Aaron that were the priests. And so that's who we're talking about here. So they created a registry of priests that would be eligible to get things going. All right, let's move on to the next one. This is also in 2016, just a few months later. the Nezer HaKodesh Institute for Kohanic Studies, or in other words, priestly studies, established to prepare Jewish priests, Kohanim, to learn how to perform the temple service. So a few months before, that's when they started compiling the list, and then they actually established the institute for teaching them. Okay, and then in that same month, article published stating that the Sanhedrin had selected Rabbi Baruch Kohen as the next Kohen Gadol, or the high priest. Okay, so let's see, were there any pictures in this one? Yeah, you have like one here. This is actually a YouTube video. But notice they're wearing temple robes and doing different things with their hands. And yeah, it's just interesting to note. You know, this is what priests looked like at the time of the first and second temple. And these are the kind of things that they did. And I feel like when we think about our own temples today, no one should really be surprised by anything in there. I think that, unfortunately, we're too inundated with modern culture and society. And so things from the ancient past seem strange and weird and just so outside of our experience. But if we learned about these things, we would know that what we do in the temple is of ancient origin. And so we shouldn't be surprised. And here we go. We have our Jewish cousins that, you know, they're doing the best that they can with what they have and what they know and according to their tradition. But yeah, so anyway, the temple, here are priests that are supposed to work in the temple. If the third temple were constructed today, these are the men that would be working in it. And then as far as the appointment of the high priest selected by the Sanhedrin, it's this guy right here. Sorry, that's not a very good picture. I pulled up this from wikidata.org. This is Rabbi Baruch Kohen. And as far as I can tell, it seems that he still holds this position. So if all of a sudden the third temple was rebuilt, he would be the first high priest. So that's kind of interesting. So they've gone as far as selecting a high priest. All right. Next, October 2016. This is in Hebron, Cave of the Patriarchs. The organization is not the Temple Institute. It's the Sanhedrin and Midrasha La'ad HaMikdash. Demonstration of the Yom Kippur temple service on Yom Kippur. All right. So here we have it. Israel 365 photos. Priests, Sanhedrin perform reenactment of Yom Kippur temple service. So you have somebody here. Obviously, they're not wearing the like the garments and the robes that the Temple Institute made for actual use in the temple. These are other reproductions. But here you go. You have like a miniature kind of like temple thing here. You have a menorah, showbread table, priests, blowing trumpets. You have some goats right here because you remember there's goats involved with Yom Kippur, the scapegoat. So different things here taking place. And here he is. Here's Baruch Kohen, the high priest. And it looks like he's reenacting what he would do on Yom Kippur. And I believe that this is the incense altar. I'm not sure. There you have the Ark of the Covenant. They do this special thing of, and I don't think it's just on Yom Kippur, because I feel like I've seen this a number of times where the priests will get down on their bellies like this, basically bowing down, worshiping God in this way. But in this case, the veil of the temple is parted and you can see the Ark of the Covenant in there. And then they're doing a special thing where they raise their hands above their heads, right? Their fingers are in that way. From what I understand, it's supposed to like resemble one of the Hebrew letters. I think it's pronounced Samish or Shamish. And I believe they do this when they're doing a priestly blessing. So anyway, hands above their heads, doing a blessing. And that's it for that. Okay. Let's move on. August of 2016, the Sanhedrin. Article published stating that we already read that. Okay, next. This is in Jerusalem at the Shiloach Spring, the Temple Institute. Third annual reenactment of the water libation ceremony on Sukkot 3, or the third day of the Feast of Tabernacles. All right, so they've done a lot of reenactments. Here you go. Going down to the Shiloach Spring. Not the Pool of Shalom, because they actually recently discovered the true location of the Pool of Siloam, and they're currently excavating it, and there's plans to restore it, so it'll be a functioning mikveh again. But in this case, they're taking it from the spring, and there he is getting the water, and then they would take that up to the temple. And on the altar, I think the altar where they burn the sacrifices, they do this where you have water coming out of this one and wine coming out of this one, and it's supposed to drip down the sides of the altar. The water and the wine libation. And then here we go, angel Moroni trumpets, or in other words, just temple trumpets. You have some Kohanim there. There is Baruch Kohen. And this is all associated with the Feast of Tabernacles. Obviously, you have the palm fronds and all that. All right. All right, moving on. December of 2016, priests prepare ritual Shabbat showbreads for a Shabbat reenactment of a temple ritual. All right, so they're doing the bread. All right, doing a reenactment of the bread that would go in the temple and go on the showbread table. You see that right here? There's the dough. There's the showbread table. Really neat. All right, next, April 2017, the 16th annual full reenactment of the Passover sacrifice and temple sacrifice. One lamb is sacrificed for this. So this is up there near the Herva synagogue, where they have the menorah on display in the Jewish quarter of the Old City, Jerusalem. And for this one, I had to pick out the pictures that were appropriate for YouTube, because they do show the actual sacrifice. So I'm not going to show that, obviously. But here they are in that plaza. There are the sheep. There are the Kohanim. Now, I'm assuming that it doesn't say in the article, but I'm assuming that he would probably be a Levite. The Levites, one of their roles in the temple was to perform music, both singing and playing instruments, right? So here you have like a makeshift altar type thing. The Kohanim washing, right? Washing hands and feet. And there's the makeshift altar now with a fire burning. Let me zoom out of this. There we have the temple trumpets. And then again, we have the priest, hands above the head. Well, in this case, kind of like out in front of them, and probably doing a priestly blessing. All right. And it said, like I said, this is the 16th annual. So I haven't done this yet, but I'll have to go back 16 years and then put the first one on this spreadsheet. But they've at least been doing this for 16 years as of 2017. Okay, July 2017, Zaka Rabbinical Council. Article published stating that for the first time in 2,000 years, let me type that in, years, a group of Kohanim, Jewish priests, will undergo training to enter the temple's Holy of Holies. And if you read the article, the reason why they're doing this is because they are preparing for whenever the temple is reinstated, and if somebody dies up there, then they want priests that are ritually pure and know the proper procedures to retrieve the dead body and take it off of the Temple Mount. So I don't know. I guess they had a discussion about this. You can see that right here. The Zaka Rabbinical Council talking about it. Okay. Next, Jerusalem, the Mount of Olives. It's the Sanhedrin. This is September 28th, 2017. Accompanied by an anointed priest and blowing two types of shofars, which are ram's horns, along with silver trumpets in the biblically prescribed manner, representatives of the nascent Sanhedrin gathered at the Mount of Olives on Thursday to count the third year of the Jubilee cycle in the most biblically accurate way possible. Again, I'm going to do a separate video about Jubilees, but you'll remember that this is like one of the things that upset Hamas and others is the blowing of the shofar. In this case, it's over on the Temple Mount, but obviously they don't like anything having to do with any of this. Shofars, priests, reenactments of any sort, because it scares them. It scares them that the Jews are getting more and more prepared to have the third temple. But anyway, so they did this. Let's move on. The 21st of May, 2018. So now President Nelson is president of the church. This is in Jerusalem, in a neighborhood overlooking the Mount of Olives. And there's a few different groups here: the Mikdash Educational Center, the United Temple Movements, and the Sanhedrin. Kohanim recreate the ritual of the first fruits as it was performed in the temple. All right, so first fruits. Remember, first fruits was the day that Christ was resurrected. He essentially fulfilled that day by being resurrected, being the first fruits to the Father of this harvest of humanity. So you have some pictures here: showbread table, makeshift altar, and whatever, and then doing the priestly blessing. Okay, let's move on to the next one. The 27th of September, Jerusalem, again at the Shiloach Spring. For the first time since the Second Temple, a golden vessel is used in the Sukkot water libation ceremony. Again, Sukkot is the Feast of Tabernacles. And here you go. So it's not that they haven't done this reenactment before, but this is the first time that they're using a golden vessel to do this. Here's some others of the Kohanim that are participating. And that's really cool. And then there they are again doing the wine and the water libation on the altar. And more blessings and trumpets. All right. Next, December 10th, 2018. This is the Sanhedrin. And now we have a third new altar. The consecration/dedication of a stone altar prepared for use in the third temple. Sanhedrin releases a declaration to the 70 nations for Hanukkah on the last day of the holiday to participate in the temple and receive its blessings. And when they say participate, they don't mean Gentiles going into the temple or anything, just supporting the activities of the temple. That's my understanding. So let's go to that. Photo spread, dedication of altar for third temple. So you can see this one looks a lot more like permanent, sturdy. Let's zoom in a little bit. So you can see the ramp right here. Compare this to the one back in when was this? 2015? Yeah. So here's the one from 2015. It looks like just like bricks and kind of like tiles. And then we're looking at this new one. If I can find it again. Right here. That's looks like it's made of stone. Cohen washing his hands and feet before performing the temple service. There's some little some little priests right there in their little priestly robes. That's kind of cute. Here's a better picture of the altar. Priest blowing trumpets, doing a blessing. Incense altar. A pile of wood on top of the main altar for burning sacrifices. It's really cool. They're very serious about this. They really are getting prepared for the third temple. They're practicing for it. That's what this is. It's like for the public, but it's also practice for when they do the real thing. All right. Jerusalem near Sha'ar Ha'ashpot, the dung gate of the Temple Mount. This is temple organizations, reenactment of the Korban Pesach, the Passover temple service, which has been performed for over a decade. And I can't remember. I don't have a picture for that. But the next one, the 26th of July, 2021, article published stating that the manufacturing of unique red dye for Third Temple begins. So this is based off of the research from 2002 from that university that identified the insect used for creating the dye. And now you have, they just mentioned this one lady, but it looks like she has helpers here. But she's collecting these insects to produce the dye. She's doing it by hand. Orna Hirschberg collects tiny insects that once a year produce the flame-colored dye that was used in the temple. That is crazy. You can read more about that in the article. Did we read this? Basically, the dye would be used for the veil of the temple and also for, I think, the garments of the high priest. Okay, November 2nd of 2021, Jerusalem, the Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin announces intent to prepare oil to anoint King Messiah and Kohen Gadol, or the high priest. So now they're getting like really ready for Messiah to show up. And this is appropriate because we know the second coming is soon. I wouldn't be surprised if, wait, do I have the picture? Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Christ actually allowed them to do this in their way, to anoint him and accept him. I could be wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually part of the process. Not that they would have the priesthood authority to do that, but maybe in some kind of way, it would still happen. I don't know. But either way, you can see how the minds of the Jewish people are being prepared for the second coming, as they're expecting Messiah in the Messianic age. Really, what's happening is they're being prepared, I think, by the Lord for the second coming and the millennium, and it's going to be incredible. But here they are preparing the olive oil in the traditional way. I know that they have a big one of these at the BYU Jerusalem Center. That's bigger than this. But, okay, let me read what I highlighted here. After an exhaustive study into the details surrounding the oil used to anoint the Kohen Gadol, or the high priest, and kings of Israel, the Sanhedrin is moving forward to prepare enough to anoint the Messiah from the house of David, who, when he returns, will rule over Israel in the Messianic era. Rabbi Hillel Weiss, the spokesman for the Sanhedrin, announced the beginning of the anointing oil project last week. Appropriately enough, just before the holiday of Hanukkah, in a sermon he gave on the Temple Mount, Rabbi Weiss emphasized that a Kohen Gadol, high priest, and temple utensils will be anointed when the temple service begins, which does not need an actual temple structure, only an altar. And then at the end, he says, "We are now entering the time when the preparations for the temple are almost complete. Now is the time for people to act, to show whether they will be part of the temple or stand against the reappearance of God's house in Jerusalem. That's really interesting. I would say that this whole thing is like getting to a fever pitch. And again, Hamas and everybody else can read these same articles or just like see it with their own eyes there in Israel. They can attend those reenactments and hear what they're saying. They can tell that the Jews are getting very serious about the third temple and expecting something to happen. You know, and again, the Red Heifers are a huge part of that. Once they have the ashes from the Red Heifers, there's nothing to stop them from constructing the third temple, other than the political reality of having to do something about the Dome of the Rock. That's ultimately the very last stage. Would be that being removed so that the third temple could be constructed. Okay, the next one, November 2021, Jerusalem, Temple Mount. Yes, on the Temple Mount. Rabbis of the Temple Mount is the name of the organization. For the first time since the Second Temple, rabbis convene to implement biblical law on the Temple Mount. And there's an entire YouTube video that you can watch, but of course they're speaking in Hebrew, so unless you speak Hebrew, you're not going to understand. But it says, the rabbis of the Temple Mount will convene every month to discuss Torah law, its significance, and its implementation on the Temple Mount in our time. So I'm sure that the Muslims are not thrilled about this. They don't like really any sort of Jewish presence on the Temple Mount. Prayer is not allowed, which is interesting that they would allow this to happen. But prayer is not allowed. Jews have to tour it on a prescribed path that goes around the Temple Mount. They have to stay with their police escorts. With this exception, I guess, once a month, going up to discuss Jewish law. So that's interesting. Okay, now we have a fourth altar. The location is Mitzpeh, Jericho. Reenactment of anointing the high priest, and new altar will be dedicated for use on the Temple Mount. So I don't know why they keep doing all these altars, but this is the fourth in the last one that I know of. As far as I know, there's been 4. But here are some pictures from that. The reenactments will include a demonstration of the anointing of the high priest and the lighting of the temple menorah. A new altar will be dedicated for use on the Temple Mount. Let's see. The event will also feature the dedication of a new altar. The altar adheres to the minimum requirements, which will allow it to be used on the Temple Mount. It is hollow and relatively small, designed to be filled with specially selected stones that have already been prepared. This altar is designed to be ready at a moment's notice and able to be transported and assembled on the Temple Mount. So maybe that's a clue as to why there's yet another one, because if this one is just a portable temple, maybe it's just supposed to be a temporary one until, where was it? Until this larger one can be brought up there, because this does not look very portable. This, in fact, looks like you basically need heavy machinery to transport this. So I think the idea is you have one that you can get up there right away, so you can start doing the temple service again, like immediately. But then in the process of time, you build or you bring up the proper altar that's like the more permanent one. So, okay. April 11th, 2022, reenactment of Passover sacrifice, lamb ritually slaughtered and roasted on a spit of pomegranate wood. Again, I can't go, where is it? I can't go all the way down because it has a picture of that, but they did it again. Passover sacrifice reenactment takes place despite threats of terror. All right, and then I think this is the last one that I have so far. The 5th of May, 2022, Jews begin to prepare stones for the construction of the third temple, where, they are actually starting to build the actual stones or to prepare them for the third temple. I'd be interested to see how much progress they've made, how many are actually, because I mean, that's going to be a lot of stones that are needed. But whatever, they are starting to do that. So there is a lot, and I doubt that I have it all here. If I put anything on a spreadsheet, I like to have a source to connect to it. So I'm going to do some more digging. If you know of anything else that wasn't mentioned here, please send it my way, and then I'll add it to the spreadsheet and cover it in another video. But you can see there's been a lot that's been done. A lot. They are serious. This isn't just like, fun little projects, to commemorate the temple. No, these are like serious efforts to get ready for the temple. Very, very serious. There have also been some like more radical elements that have called on people to go up to the Temple Mount and perform actual sacrifices, and offered cash rewards for doing it if they successfully do it. So there's not a lot of people that support that, and it's illegal, but it seems that happens pretty much every year around the time of Passover. It's been noted that it wouldn't be a proper sacrifice if it wasn't done according to Jewish law, and you'd have to be a priest. Although I've talked to Rabbi Gerfein, and he's talked about the fact that Gentiles can do sacrifices. It seemed pretty complicated, and it wouldn't like replace what the Jewish sacrifices that are done in the temple, but that technically Gentiles can do sacrifices of their own, and there's nothing to stop them from doing that. So I don't know if that ties into like going up to the Temple Mount and doing a sacrifice if they're calling for Gentiles to do it. But anyway, you can see how the Muslims might be worried that if you have the right type of government in place, Israeli government, that they may actually take action, that they may be invested into all this. So I've done a video before where Netanyahu was told by a prominent rabbi that he would be the one, let me see if I can find it, that he would be the one that would hand the keys over to Messiah. Let's see, Netanyahu. Yeah, right here. This was just 11 months ago. Rabbis, Netanyahu preparing way for Messiah. Major changes to Israeli government underway right now. Yeah, I think I did this video because this is when the previous coalition of Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid fell apart. They were the prime ministers before Netanyahu. They came to power for just a very short time, and then their government fell apart. But in this video, I mentioned the fact that that's what a major rabbi told Netanyahu, is that he would be the one to hand the keys over to Messiah. And, he's a secular Jew, but he still might believe it. You never know. And it seems like there are other Jews that believe it. We're living in a very, very interesting time right now, you guys. So we have these red heifers that are right now. Some of them seem that like they're already ready, but the very last one should be ready by April. And if it's true that they would do it at the time of Passover, then Well, let's look for the actual dates. Let's go to hebcal.com, 2024 calendar. So this year, Passover, Pesach, is going to be from the evening of the 22nd of April until the evening of the 30th of April. This is usually a time of heightened tensions around this time in Israel, so we'll see how it goes this year. Probably not good. This is going to be, excuse me, this is going to be the same month of the eclipse, the day after General Conference. There's just like so many things to think about. The eclipse is going to be on the last day of the Hebrew year. And when I say last day, the Hebrew calendar has 4 New Years. The one that we think of as a new year takes place usually in September or October, during the 7th month, which is Tishri. So the first day of that month is Rosh Hashanah. That's when they change the year. But the first month is actually Nisan. Nisan is the month of Passover. And so the eclipse is going to happen on the last day of Adar 2, because this Hebrew year that we're in right now is a leap year. So that they, instead of adding a day, they add an entire month. And so anyway, the eclipse is going to happen on the last day of the Hebrew year. And then we're going to move into the first month of Nisan right after that. So just crazy things to think about and to watch. But yeah. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share, and I'll talk to you guys later.